Alrighty, Lumberjacks, welcome back. And today we're going to be looking at the processor, particularly the dangle head processor. So the processor is the machine that removes the limbs off of the trees. It's also the machine that cuts the logs into specific lengths for the loading stage. So we're going to go over the positioning of the processor and cutting lengths and all that fun. So again, this one is fitted with the Waratah head, which is a dangle-style processor head. Dangle-style processor heads have the ability to swing back and forth. This allows you to have a little bit more mobility with the logs. So first off, what we want to do is I'm going to show you guys the positioning of where I park my machines. So for the most part, you want to be fairly close to the pile, and you want your tracks to be lined up alongside the pile. So I'm going to back right in here. So generally, I want to keep about a couple foot distance from the tracks and the pile. That might be a little close. Let's take a look. So from your inside view, you want to still be able to see the logs. That's actually not too bad. I can see all the logs pretty clearly. You can clear the distance a little bit more, but that's pretty good. As long as you have a little bit of space to work, then you're good. So now that you've set your positioning, we generally want to work from the front side of the pile and then work our way to the back side of the pile. This allows us to build our log deck in front of us as we're working. That way we're not trying to drive forward over stuff that we've already cut. So from this in-cab view, we're going to go over the processor here a little bit. If you hit F1 on your keyboard, you'll have this little help menu appear up in the top corner there. Now, this menu, the second option down has the cut length. So the cut length determines exactly how long you want to cut your logs to. So if you hit Y, as in yellow, on your keyboard, it will cycle through the different log lengths. So if you're cutting short logs, I generally stay between 5 meters and usually 6.5 meters. So for the purposes of this video, we're going to cut 5.5 meters for the shorts, and we're going to do that for half the pile, and then we're going to do probably 14s for long. So let's do short logs first. So when you're cutting logs with the processor, let's go over the different parts of it. So you have the ability to open your primary claw on the back. These are your knives. And you also have the ability to open your roller arms, which are these guys here. Now, also on the roller arms, there's the actual rollers that pull the logs forward and backwards through the head while you're processing. And also, like I said, this is a dangle head, so when you swing this head, it'll have a free swing to it, which takes a little bit of getting used to, but as long as you operate nice and slow, you'll get used to it. So before we do anything, we want to hit B on the keyboard, as in Bravo. And what that does is it engages the head. So at the very top of that list in the help menu, you'll see B, which says turn off mulcher, which is, it's not a mulcher, it's a processor. But if you look at the very, very top, there's those two little tractors. Once you see that tractor icon lit up, like as in it's blue, bright blue, that means it's on. So if you're in this mode and you see the little tractor icons, if the processor head is off, it's white. If it's on, it's blue in the top left-hand corner. All right? So what you want to do is, like I said, you want to start working from the front of your pile and then work your way back to the back side of your pile. So also on this head, it has the delimber script. So sometimes if your trees are a little bit too bushy and you can't really see what you're cutting, you can just kind of wave your head like a magic wand here, and it'll actually clear some of those limbs off of the trees so that you can see what you're looking at. Not exactly the most realistic thing in the world, but in real life, the limbs also don't do what they do in this game. So we're gonna take that little cheat, the little cheat of goodness. So when you're going to cut a log, there's different styles of opening. So if you're brand new to the game, it's best to just have everything open. So keep your roller arms open, keep your main claws open. Hover your head over top of the log like so, and then bite down on the log until it rolls up into the grapple. So now, if you hit X on your keyboard, it starts the cutting process. So that'll roll the tree back. So once the tree rolls back, it's actually ready to cut and ready to process. Now, on this type of processor head and the way the game works, as you turn your head, you have to rotate your grapple. Because if you don't rotate your grapple, it puts pressure on it. So as you turn, if you tap your rotate button, you'll notice that the grapple kind of rolls nicely. And you only got to tap it lightly as you swing back. And then tap it forward again, so that your head stays in alignment. If you don't, what'll happen is it'll try to roll over on its side like that, which is not good. Okay, so as you swing, you got everything all nice and lined up here. I generally close my secondary roller arms just because it's good. You don't have to if you don't want to, but keep those arms nice and tight to the tree. We then want to hit X again, and it'll roll out the first log. So that'll actually bring it to your first log length so that it's ready to cut. Another button, so if you hit escape on your keyboard, go under the cog symbol here. If you scroll down to automatic wood harvester cutting, I always have this turned off. I don't like having it on. If you turn it off, it makes it so that log stops before cutting. If you have it on, it just automatically cuts, which is not good because sometimes you don't have your tree lined up in the pile. So let's line it up about there and then hit X, and it'll cut and fall to the ground. It's then ready to run again, so hit X again. It'll run that log through. And you want to try to keep it lined up with that other log. So if you can drop it in the same kind of idea location, that one's kind of off a bit. Again, cut. Now, generally, there's that little tiny piece left in the head, and it's annoying because it's not quite long enough to make a nice log out of. As you can see, it tapers off to a really fine toothpicky point. So generally, I wouldn't want to put that bit in the pile because it's not a very nice piece. So what I'll generally do is I will just push X again to run it out, and I'll just put it over here off to the side, and you can cut it and drop it right there. But it's not a very good log, and it's not going to be great for loading. So we'll call this our tops pile, and we can put that over there. So again, we're going to go back to the pile, open our claws. Again, as you get quicker, you can either leave these claws open all the time if you're new, because you don't have to close them. I usually keep that set closed, and then as I grab, I open that other set and kind of roll it up into it. But if you're new and you don't want to use, there's 10 million controls, just keep that open. You don't have to use it. So I'm gonna go new person style. So here we go. Again, we have a very small piece of log here, so we're just gonna run it through, and we're just gonna kind of drop it. So what'll happen sometimes, your logs are gonna bounce around because your pile's not really set. And they kind of can get a little bit ugly. So if your pile starts to look a little bit ugly and you're like, oh, I really don't like that, you can go around and play with it and kind of rearrange it a bit, straighten it out, and then hopefully it all falls nicely eventually to where you want it. There we go. Let's just do that. Perfect. So again, these roller arms can be used manually. So for instance, if I wanted to pick up this tree and I wanted to run it ahead a bit, I can do that with the automatic roller arms, which we set in the controls, in the control video there. And it's not cutting yet, but anytime you're ready to actually cut, if you hit X, it'll run that automatically to the end, and then you're ready to cut. So sometimes when you're working with really, really big trees, like larger stuff, you need to run it ahead in order to get it lined up straight with where you're cutting. So sometimes you run it back and forth just so it makes a nice little pile. And again, we have that end that we don't want, so we'll just run that out and we'll just dump it over here. Perfect. So again, back to our pile. Again, so if I have a tree, like for instance, if I wanted to take a tree out of the middle, for instance, let's grab, like say, oh, I want this tree. Sometimes what'll happen, oops, these are really hard to get in the middle of the pile. That's why we work from the end. So sometimes it's stuck. I can tell right now that the tip, like the top of the log is stuck in the pile. So that's when I said the run is really nice. So I can run that out until it hops over and it's straight. So now it's out of the pile and it's straight. So then I can run it back and it's nice and straight lined up so that I can run it through. Again, as new guys, I'm trying not to overwhelm new guys because I realize this is a lot of stuff going on in these videos. But for the most part, your main importance is just grabbing the logs, cutting them, and making them into these nice little piles as we got right here. And again, you want to keep your piles as nice as possible, throwing your tops to the side if you can. And then the straighter these piles are, the easier it's going to be for loading in the next video. So we want to try to keep those as straight as possible. Okay, we're going to cut 2 more short logs, and then we're going to switch over to long logs. So again, working from this side makes it really easy because you can grab all these logs pretty straight. There we go. And again, I'm running these a little bit further out. As you can see, we're pretty close to the road. Once we switch to longs, we'll have to back up our pile a little bit, because if not, we'll be sticking onto the road. We don't want that. Okay, let's cut 1 more tree for the short logs, and then we're going to switch over to longs. In the next video, we're going to be loading both longs and shorts for a demonstration. Okay, so we're just going to leave a little pile here. We'll leave our little tops over here. And you guys can get as OCD organized as you want. When you're backing up, make sure you got space to back up. So yeah, you can be as organized as you want or as unorganized as you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to, as you can see, I'm hitting Y on the keyboard to change my cut lengths, and I'm going to go all the way up to a 13, let's do 13.5 meters, just for fun. So these are considered long logs. So now, as you can see, our short log pile, there's actually quite a bit of room here for the short logs. There's, I didn't need that much space, but there's a lot of room. Now, when I go to run along, I can already tell I have way too much space, or not enough space. It'll probably clear it, but it'll probably be on the road a little bit. So watch as I run this log. So now we're going to switch to longs. Now, longs are a little bit different than shorts. So generally, I'll leave my processor head really far back into that pile, because I can already tell it's going to be probably onto the road a bit. Oh, actually, it's not too bad. It's close, though. So that's a 13.5, which is a long log. So what I'll do is I'm going to bump it ahead just a little teeny bit here to give myself a little bit of space, and then cut that. So now that'll be the start of my pile. So I'm laying it right in front of me. So now you can see why we're working from the front of the pile to the back, because I can't go forward. I can only go backwards away from where I'm stacking my logs. So again, that's close. It's kind of right on the tip of the road, but you don't want it much, even further back would be better. You don't really want it that close. The further away from the road, the more space you're going to have to work with your loader. We'll get into that when we get to the loading spot. So now in this case, we kind of have, it's not quite long enough to be a full long. So what I'll do is I'll either chuck that into the top pile, or I'll just run it out and I'll leave it kind of in between the short and the long pile as a sort of medium size. So now we kind of have this weird medium-sized log that's not quite super long, but it's not quite short either. You could always recut this into a short log if you want, but we're just going to leave it as a medium, and I'll show you guys how to load that extra stuff on there as well. You guys will get a little bit of advanced training with the loader. Okay, so again, we're going to keep processing, and again, we're just running out longs because I want a half-decent pile of longs. You got to kind of pay attention to where you're dropping the logs to while you're working, making sure that you're lined up kind of with your pile while you're cutting, because if not, they will just go all over the place while you're working. So you got to kind of aim the head a little bit and try to line it up nicely. Okay, and we're just going to keep going here, whip out a bunch of these. And because all the trees are different lengths, like when you cut them down, some will work really well and then others won't. This is kind of a weird size, so I'm going to throw it over there. It's not really a medium or the other kind. Again, all of this comes with time and experience and just playing around. You guys will determine what works best for yourselves. Let's drive ahead a little bit here. Oops. Getting around these piles can sometimes, see, like when they're far back and got a little bit of distance, sometimes I'll just skip that one and come back to it after I make myself a little bit of a hole. Once you actually start building a deck of logs here, you'll notice that these logs slide really nicely over top of each other, and then you're not really fighting with them as much. Oops, and I was going to try to slide that. Trying to keep these separate is good. Don't mix sizes in your decks. So like that one that I just dropped in there shouldn't really be in there. I should keep it ahead a bit. So I'm going to pop this one out a little here. Drop that about there. So this little guy here, which is kind of just tucked in the middle, I'm going to pull that out of there if I can get my little claw on it. Oop. This is the fun part of processing, is getting the little details. Actually, the easiest way will be to pull this long out here. Shwink. If I can get my claw on it. There we go. And you can run it back and then run it out. This is really handy for keeping your piles nice and clean. So again, if you're putting those mediums in there, it's good to kind of put them towards the top or away from the main pile. That way you're not going to get it too messy. Oops, from your loading stage. And we're just going to keep cutting here. And you guys can build some pretty big decks. Again, this game is really limited physics-wise, and also on your gaming setup, depending on what kind of computer you got running and what it can handle. So you don't want to get too crazy with your piles. Like, you don't want 10,000 logs in a pile, otherwise your game's going to probably crash, which you don't want. Again, with this little top, we're going to slip it right in between here and drop it right there. It'd be nice to actually get a decent pile of wood here. I don't have to cut all of these, but I wanted to get at least a few. So the processing part is a very slow process. Haha. And some people really love it, and other people really don't like doing it. I personally really like processing. I think it's pretty fun to do all the wood sorting and kind of have your own little OCD piles for cleaning up. As you get mixed wood too, sometimes you're going to get the piles that are a little bit stuck together, which is kind of annoying. So what I do, I'm just going to check this over here. So if these are really bunched together really too tight, like, let's see if I can bring them even closer together here. I can't really move them. But if they're really tight and I can't get them to separate and I'm just kind of fighting with it, what I'll generally do is actually just go in and I'll grab a big handful and I'll actually just chuck them out a little bit. So I'll grab one, be like, throw it out. And that way you get a little bit of spacing between your trees. So then when you're grabbing them, it's not such a annoying process, which makes life a little bit better. So if I feel I'm getting a little too close to my cab here while I'm working. So if I feel I'm getting a little bit too close to my cab, just back your machine up a little bit, which I'm going to do right after this cut. So then put it in reverse. You can back up a little bit, track back, and then just keep on keeping on. And we'll cut a few more here. Again, we got kind of a medium. The hard part's determining what you can get out of the next piece. Like, you know, sometimes you don't know. Like these bigger trees, if they have a really fat bottom, that's usually a good tell that they're going to be longer. It's not always the case, but especially on these little maps. Like, I know I can get 2 13.5s out of this guy because it's a really long tree. So as you're going, you'll see, oh, I can get another one. But then sometimes you're like right on the edge and you're like, can I get one more? I don't know. And sometimes you run it and you're wrong. That just takes experience and time. You'll figure that out. Okay, so I'm actually just going to stop there. You guys get the process. I don't need to cut all of these trees. But just keep working your way back into the pile and cutting ahead and building up a deck. Again, the more separated you keep all your piles, like your top pile, your shorts, your longs, even your medium length, the easier the loading phase is going to be. If you don't separate these parts and pieces, it's a lot messier, but I mean, that's up to you guys what you want to do. All right, okay, so that's what for the processing video. We will catch you guys in the next one for loading. All right, see you in a bit.